Well, I have a combined experience of 20 years in both teaching and application development. In my career, I worked with many software companies like Accenture, Virtusa, Agility. Well, the most recent one being Accenture. In Accenture, I had mainly delivered my services to the learning and management team, learning and knowledge management team, LKM team. Here in this training program, we are going to study two editions of Java, which are Java SE and Java EE. Java SE stands for Standard Edition, and it is also called by many people as Core Java. Java EE stands for Enterprise Edition. Java EE enables us develop large-scale real-world applications like enterprise Java Beans, commercial web applications, web services, etc. Java SE lays down the foundation for us. In Java SE, we would be looking at the language basics first. And then we'll study object-oriented programming concepts, mainly classes and objects, inheritance, polymorphism, the concept of interfaces, abstract classes, packages, and then gradually we shall study exception handling. Then a very interesting concept called multi-threading. And then we shall study the most important concept of Java SE, which is called collections. Well, I would be explaining each and every topic later on in a more clear and precise manner. For now, what I am writing are just the main heading of the topics that will be covered. There are many subtopics underneath every main topic again. So we'll look into everything in detail. It is worth going slow in the beginning, especially in case of those people who are learning a programming language for the first time. Very important that they grasp the fundamentals thoroughly. So some of you, in a large gathering like this, it's quite possible that some of you might be already knowing the basics. But for the few who already know basics, if I teach the things at a greater pace in the beginning, then many of us will be left behind. So just for the sake of a few, I cannot ignore the rest, right? So even those who know the basics, well, I request them to once again listen to all the concepts so that this becomes, simply like one kind of revision, right? Having revived all the concepts, basic concepts, once again, you only become more stronger in advanced Java later. So it is worth spending some time in the beginning by going slowly. Right? After completing this concept called collections, I will introduce you to file stream in Java. So there we will be learning how we can utilize the power of Java in writing data to persistent memory. Not only writing data, but also reading data from it. Next, soon after completing these fundamental concepts, I will give you a quick introduction to a language called SQL, which can also be pronounced as SQL. It stands for Structured Query Language. It is a fourth generation language, not related to Java. However, knowledge of SQL is very much required nowadays, because see, once upon a time, when I joined the industry newly, the duty of a Java developer was to write only Java code. But nowadays, companies don't prefer people who know only Java. Companies want full stack developers. Means those who can handle the entire project, who can work in any layer of the project. Once upon a time, we being Java programmers, we used to work only in the application layer, where our duty was to write code related to business logic simply. But business logic is not the only thing that governs the whole application, right? Every application, commercial application, will tend to have three layers, namely presentation layer, application layer, and database layer. In the presentation layer, there runs the code that generates graphical user interface. Graphical user interface with the help of which the end user will be able to communicate with our application. And in the middle layer, there runs the code related to business logic. We call it as application layer. And all the knowledge that you will gain from me at the time of learning core Java will be helpful in that middle layer. The third layer is the database layer, wherein your commercial application communicates with a backend DBMS like Oracle or MySQL. Every commercial application requires persistent support. Persistence is the ability by virtue of which data can be stored in secondary memory like your hard disk. And database management system is a category of software which is a specialist in providing those persistent services. So in order to store transactional data, every commercial application requires a backend support. And that backend database management system responds only to commands that are given by using this language called SQL. So a person who knows other technologies apart from Java, other technologies like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, SQL, XML, will only become eligible to work in all the three layers. A person who can manage application development in all three layers is called as full stack developer. Means developer should be able to manage UI, application layer, and business logic, and also the database. And keeping this need in view, though this training program is mainly a Java-oriented program, well, we have introduced other technologies also into it. Right? Other technologies like the one that I just mentioned here, structured query language, and not only HTML, CSS, and basics of JavaScript. So we may not be diving too deep into JavaScript. Nevertheless, we'll show you all those, basic features with the help of which at least JavaScript, you can know how JavaScript can be used to perform client-side validation. Remember, nowadays JavaScript has evolved into a full-fledged language. Maybe in the year 2021 or 2022, JavaScript would become the topmost language. There are many frameworks which have evolved over JavaScript. We will not be diving too deep into JavaScript, but I will be, teaching you all those things that are required for you, as a Java developer, right? HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and a good introduction to XML will also be required. So these are the technologies that one must know apart from Java nowadays to become successful in the industry. So after having completed all these things, and one another doubt may arise in mind to any beginner: is it possible for us to cope up with so many things? Well, don't worry. Even those who come from non-IT backgrounds like civil engineering, mechanical engineering, have established themselves as successful professionals in this industry. At Accenture, many of the project managers with whom I have contact are from non-IT backgrounds. They are all engineers, but from mechanical engineering, civil engineering, etc. Anybody who have that zeal to innovate new things, whoever is ready to come up, or whoever is ready to get new ideas, induce new ideas into the industry, can easily become successful here. So your background doesn't matter much. And at the same time, of course, we must acknowledge that people coming from pure IT background, computer science and IT, will definitely have an added advantage, but others need not worry. That's what I am only trying to give you assurance, okay, from my side, being an experienced person, right? HTML, CSS, well, these are all simple things. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, which is simply a language consisting of tags. Once I give you sufficient introduction to it and give you the idea about it, you yourself can explore HTML and learn it through self-study. Okay, there are so many, but you can't do the same as far as Java is concerned. You need the assistance of an experienced person like me, at least in core Java, okay, for you to gain that confidence of exploring on your own further, right? But HTML, CSS are simple things to learn. Even XML also can be easily understood, right? JavaScript, being one another language, simply will have many of the features that you already study in core Java, right? So, and SQL or SQL is a fourth generation language, a very high level language that resembles our general English. It's a querying language. Many people learn it in a matter of 2 to 3 days, all right? So it's my duty. I am here. Don't worry. It's my duty to take you through or sail you through all these things comfortably, right? Now, once we finish learning these other technologies, we'll come back to the mainstream Java again. In Java EE, we would be exploring an advanced concept called JDBC. JDBC stands for Java Database Connectivity. And JDBC API acts as a glue between the front end and the back end. The front end is nothing but UI, which the end user sees. Back end is a database management system, right? Between front end and back end, there's going to run this API called JDBC. API stands for Application Programming Interface. See, people coming from non-IT background may find the jargon, the terminology used here a bit strange in the beginning, right? Don't worry, very soon you will become, used to it. Simple terms. Initially, you may find them a bit strange and little bit hard to understand. Okay. Whenever you get any doubt related to even the simple term that I use, you can raise your doubt. Okay. In the end, we shall, only devote some 10 to 15 minutes for clearing the doubts. Right. There will be a separate time slot allocated for you people. Right. So don't worry. Now, API means application programming interface. Is the set of all those inbuilt classes, interfaces, which have been developed for us. JDBC API allows us to easily connect the front-end Java application with the back-end DBM. After having studied JDBC, we'll study technologies like servlets, JSP. It is here where the knowledge that you gained in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript will become extremely useful. Right? And starting from servlets onwards, you will be learning how to develop websites. Okay. Well, all these core Java concepts, on the other hand, will be studied and learned by building console application programs. And one another thing that I would like to tell you is, this course is a practical oriented course. Okay? We will spend very less time in discussing, the theoretical issues. Theory is also important, but mainly practical oriented. Therefore, every concept shall be studied and understood by writing programs. Okay? We'll begin with small programs in the beginning. By the time we come to the end of this course, well, we shall all attain that ability of developing large-scale applications like a website, right? Commercial website. So all through practice, the best way of learning Java is by doing. Doing means hands-on. Start working. The key, only practice is the key to success here. Right? So in the class, during the session, every topic will be explained through a program, and in addition to that, I will also give you exercises. Right? For you to gain enough confidence, well, it's better to put yourself to practice, right, as much as possible. Okay, so let's JSP. JSP stands for Java Server Pages. These technologies allow you to develop websites, but these two being raw technologies, they allow you to develop websites only in a basic manner. If your website requires more sophistication, more centralization, and if you want to have more control over the work that you do, and if you want to finish complex tasks more easily, then to these technologies, you must add third-party framework like Spring and Hibernate, which will be covered in this training program. Spring is a Java-based framework, but is developed by a third party. When we say third party, I mean not developed by Oracle Corporation. Java is nowadays maintained by Oracle, right? Actually, Java was invented, created, and introduced to us by a company called Sun Microsystems in the beginning. Oracle Corporation has taken over Sun now. Okay. Now, if we say third party, it means some other community other than Oracle, right? Spring, Hibernate. See, this is a very big open source community. There are so many organizations who have come forward and developed Java-based frameworks and contributed to the upliftment of Java. Only because of the contribution made by people like these, communities like this, Java has become so popular. In general purpose application development area, Java is the leader. Of course, there is one another very popular language which has emerged to be the topmost language nowadays, Python. But Python is best suited for data science. In data science area, Python is the leader. In general purpose application development area, Java is the leader, no doubt. Right? Spring Hibernate shall also be studied. And in the end, we'll look at one project work, wherein I will be introducing you to all the industry standards. In industry, in production, developing a project means not writing a program, right? So there are so many things, so many standards that you have to know. Well, we'll discuss about all of them. Well, overall, these are all the technologies that you would be learning in this mainstream Java. Initially, I will also show you how to set up the environment. It's a very, straightforward, simple process, of course. In the beginning, all you need is one JDK, Java Development Kit, which can be freely downloaded from Oracle's official website. And installation is also a simply 4 to 5 step process. An installation wizard guides you through the process. You have to simply click on next, 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 and finish button. Right? And well, if you want, I can guide you through the process also. And secondly, after installing JDK, you should also get one IDE called Eclipse. Eclipse, in fact, doesn't require installation at all. Simply, it can be downloaded as a zip file, and after extracting the contents, you can readily start using Eclipse. So, in the initial stages, what you need are only JDK and Eclipse. Later on, when you come to Java EE, of course, you should get some more things onto your system, like on server, web server, like Tomcat, and a database management system, okay, for learning the SQL and working with JDBC, right? So those things will also be needed. Nowadays, there is a DBMS called MySQL, which is a open source. All these are open source technologies. You can freely download them. I'll guide you through that process. Don't worry. Well, to the extent, whatever we discussed so far, are there any doubts? You can get them clarified now. Well, as I said, what I mentioned here are only the main topics. There are so many subtopics that are going to come up, right? As we take up each topic, we'll first, list out the subtopics under it, and then we'll start exploring them one by one. So, the time frame, well, usually 1 to 1.5 hours will be required. I'm ready to extend the time even up to 2 hours, right? If 1.5 hours to 2 hours time is allocated, then, it roughly takes somewhere around 45 days for me to complete all these things. But the time frame is only a formal thing, right? See, if I don't announce any, time frame like that, people will simply think, how long this is going to take, right? But in my point of view, fixing some time like that and rushing up the things will not serve the purpose. Eventually, by the time we come to the end of this course, you all should become capable of writing code on your own. You all should become capable of working on your own without requiring an assistance from someone like me, right? In the industry there, in the production, there will be nobody ready to provide you assistance. Everybody will be busy in their job, right? So attaining that confidence is important. And you will gain that confidence and you will gain that skill of working on your own, exploring things on your own, only provided you understood these things thoroughly, the basics. So in the basics area, I'm ready to spend more time, even if you require, right? Only with your consent, after you thoroughly understand one topic, I'll go to the next one. And remember, all these concepts are interrelated. So I request that you don't miss out even a single session, right? For example, a person who doesn't know about classes and objects cannot understand anything about inheritance, okay? And inheritance is the cornerstone for all other remaining concepts. Secondly, without having the knowledge of exception handling, one should not try to study and understand multi-threading, because exception handling is an integral part of multi-threading. These are all interdependent topics, there is a specific learning curve, a path. Through my experience, I know the correct way of learning these things one after the other. I will be introducing you to them only in that correct sequence. Okay? So if you miss out few things here and there, then it will become extremely difficult for you to cope up. By the time you come to Java Enterprise Edition, okay, which is the advanced Java, Java should start appearing like plain English in your mind. Okay, when you read an article in a newspaper, you don't require anybody's assistance to explain what it is, right? Similar to that, after having thoroughly learned core Java, you must become capable of understanding the code written by even someone else easily without having to be told or explained. And the key to success, as I already said, is practice. More the practice, more the confidence you will get, more familiar you will become with syntaxes. Once syntactical fear is driven away from mind, then you start feeling comfortable. Java will be simply like a plain English, right? You will find that you are in simply shallow waters. You are not in neck deep water, right? Initially, Java may appear like a big ocean, but as you start exploring it, okay, the more you dive deeper, it appears like only a shallow thing, not deeper at all, right? So your cooperation will also be required. Two things: one, continuity; the other thing is practice. These are the two things that you must, two efforts that you must put from your side. And as far as technical issues are concerned, leave everything to me. In the event of not understanding anything, well, ask me to explain it again. If required, I will introduce that same concept to you through another example, right? The first example that I use, well, may appear a bit difficult to you to follow. Then don't hesitate. Ask me to explain the same concept by providing another example. Most of the things that we'll discuss here will be real-time issues. And understanding the syntax is one part, and understanding the application is another part. Application is very important, right? You should all know at which point of time in real-time application development a particular concept has to be used, right? That is called application. We'll discuss all those things, don't worry. Are there any doubts? Well, I'm ready to take up doubts. As you all know, this is the first time, right, we are interacting. So I'm not new to online teaching. However, the environment that is provided to me here is good, comfortable, but I'm a bit new to it. So are there any doubts? You can raise your doubts now. You can send me doubts through chat window. All right, so I hope there are no doubts. So further, may I continue for some more time? Well, I hope I can continue further, right? All right. Now, let me explain why Java has become so popular. Before concluding today's session, today I haven't demonstrated any part of coding, right? Don't worry, very soon we'll begin. First, let me tell you how or why Java has become so popular. Okay. Yeah, I see some. Yeah, okay, okay. Yeah, yeah. Somebody I think was interested in knowing whether we will be learning SOAP and REST APIs. Right? No problem. See, if that is to be included, we will definitely do so. SOAP and REST APIs will allow you to enable you to develop web services. Nowadays, there is a great demand for web services too. All right. So after having learned about websites, we will definitely learn web services also. No problem. Sure, we'll do that. Any more? No. All right. Now, let me then come back to the topic, main topic. Why Java has become so popular? Popularity of Java is mainly due to bytecode. Bytecode is the universal code. Java is, of course, an open source programming language. Open source being free. Not only that, even the source code using which the Java compiler and JVM were developed is freely available for everyone to review. And to begin production using Java, there is no need to apply for licenses. Even startup companies can straight away sell their products provided they are developed using Java. There is one language called C#. You might have heard about it. C# is also a language having the same capabilities as that of Java, but still lags behind Java. The reason? C# can be freely used only for educational purposes. When it comes to the matter of doing business, well, one had to obtain licenses from Microsoft and pay heavy royalties to them. But there aren't any restrictions like that as far as Java is concerned. So this is one reason for which many clients prefer Java. And secondly, Java is platform independent. This, of course, being the main reason behind its popularity. Java promotes the idea of write anywhere, run anywhere. You can develop a Java application on Windows platform, and later you can ship that application onto Linux and then run it successfully without any problem. Well, what is meant by platform? Operating system plus processor together is called platform. Windows running on 32-bit processor is one platform. Windows 64-bit processor is another platform. Linux 32-bit, Linux 64-bit are two other platforms. So when the operating system changes or when the processor changes, the platform will also change. There are various platforms, right, available in the market nowadays. Once upon a time, it used to be like this. Source code, when compiled, used to become machine code. And this machine code was what people used to run in the olden days directly. Of course, even nowadays, only machine code runs on any computer. Okay. But in the olden days, software developers used it to produce machine code directly on their platform itself. And machine code is not portable. Machine code is completely specific to the platform on which it is being produced. Means machine code that is generated on Windows, for instance, will not run on Linux. Or machine code that is generated on 64-bit processor will not run on 32-bit processor. So after having developed the project and released it in the form of machine code to the client, well, if the client had a different platform, then the machine code never used to run there. This was a very big challenge which the industry used to face in the olden days. But Java has successfully overcome the problem by introducing two phases here. At Sun Microsystems, Sun was the company who developed and introduced Java for the first time in the year 1995. At Sun Microsystems, they not only developed the language, but also developed one compiler and one interpreter. Interpreter was called JVM. So one compiler and JVM. They developed only one compiler, but they developed many JVMs. JVM stands for Java Virtual Machine. Many JVMs because there are many platforms. Means they developed a separate JVM for each one of the available platforms. For example, for Linux, one JVM. Linux, again, under Linux, there are two JVMs, one for 32-bit, another for 64-bit. So here in the diagram, I showed only a few, right? Windows 32-bit, one JVM, and Windows 64-bit, another JVM. There are so many JVMs. Now, as I already said, there is only one compiler, right? See, after having developed source code in Java, one must give that source code to the Java compiler. I will show you all these things practically. Don't worry. First, understand the reason behind, popularity of Java. Source code, after having developed, source code is the code written by the programmer. Source code means high-level code. Only programmer can understand it. The platform means underlying processor cannot understand source code, right? Source code somehow must be converted to machine code. Only then your computer can understand and run it. So after having developed source code, one should give that source code to Java compiler so that the compiler translates source code into a special form of code called bytecode. This bytecode cannot be understood by us. And not even the CPU can understand it. Means it is somewhere in the middle, neither high level nor low level. Low level code can be understood by your computer, right? But bytecode is neither high level code nor low level code, somewhere in the middle of the two. This bytecode then becomes input for JVM. As I said, at Sun Microsystems, they developed many JVMs, one for each one of the available platforms. They developed a separate JVM, right? Now, all these JVMs were designed or developed to take same bytecode as input. So JVM can understand bytecode. And a JVM's duty is to take bytecode as input and convert it into its native machine code, native to that JVM. From platform to platform, JVM is different, right? So each one of these JVMs is capable of converting bytecode into machine code that runs on its own platform. It means JVM's platform. JVM will not only convert bytecode into machine code, but will also run it. So JVM is also called as the runtime environment. Once upon a time, programs used to be run through OS, underlying operating system. But nowadays, target platform is not OS, but the JVM. Now, all JVMs are available at free of cost. So nowadays, the software companies, they develop source code, compile it, convert it into bytecode, give that bytecode to their JVM, let their JVM convert that bytecode into machine code and run it. After being satisfied with the output, software companies deliver the project to the client in the form of bytecode. Bytecode, after having shipped to the client's machine, will get converted to machine code by the JVM that is present in on that client's machine. And which JVM? According to the platform the client possesses, a particular JVM needs to be installed on the client's machine. That's all. Means clients are required to install JVM and be ready. All JVMs are available at free of cost. Means same bytecode can then be converted to machine code and run on any platform now, right? This is how Java has attained platform independence, and this is what made Java a very, very popular language. And apart from being open source and platform independent, Java also has other features like, object oriented, and then it derives its characteristic features from an old language called C. There are many people who know C, so for all of them it becomes easy to understand the basics initially. But don't worry, there is no such prerequisite like learning C before coming to Java. Okay, don't worry. I'm going to take you through the basics, fundamentals. So those I will keep even those who do not know C in view, right? And teach you from the scratch, right? Even the keywords shall be explained clearly initially. So initially, I know my training program may appear a bit slow, but as I already said, it is worth going slow in the beginning. I saw many people, in a hurried manner who rush up initial basics, don't understand them, come to the advanced Java and then fail to understand anything there, right? Do not be in an impression that the industry uses only advanced Java. Without core Java, where there is advanced Java, core Java is the foundation for advanced Java. In fact, by my experience, I can tell you one thing. Those who know core Java thoroughly can learn advanced Java even through self-study. Assistance of a faculty will not be needed for me, if at all people learn core Java thoroughly. So the secret lies there, right? So never ignore the core Java part. Well, anyway, let me quickly show you one small program being demonstrated so that you can know the environment that I will be using for teaching the things. I had already installed JDK. I started Eclipse. As far as this environment setup is concerned, I will show you how to download the things, from where to download them, how to install them when the regular classes begin, right? Now here, Eclipse is an IDE. IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. IDE puts all the tools that are necessary for writing the programs, compiling the programs, debugging them, running them, and testing them. All things put together in one place is called IDE, Integrated Development Environment. It even provides you an editor using which you can comfortably write code. There are many IDEs available in the market. All are open source almost. Eclipse, IntelliJ, IDEA. There is another popular IDE called NetBeans. There are many of them. See, IDE is not Java. Okay, we have come here to learn Java. Same Java runs on any IDE. From IDE to IDE, only the look and feel and some of the menu items will change. Eclipse, being an open source IDE, and being an IDE which was there in place a long time back, is very, very popular. 75% of the companies in the industry use Eclipse. That is why we choose Eclipse. But if you are interested in working out the same programs and any other IDE, you are welcome. Okay, you need only minimum assistance from me. To keep consistent, let us try to use Eclipse to the maximum extent. And Eclipse, when started, asks you to choose a workspace. Workspace is nothing but a folder in which you would be saving all your projects. So you have to show one folder as a workspace. That folder, if it is an existing folder, you can click this browse button, browse through your local file system and point out the folder. Or you may specify a new folder here, right? Name of a new folder, so that that new folder will be created in the process. I mentioned something like CI here, right? And then I'm going to click OK. So now internally, Eclipse creates that folder called CI in my F drive and will record that folder as the workspace. So all those projects that I will develop from now onwards using Eclipse will be saved in that folder. So workspace is not simply a folder. Remember, I told you initially, terminology, jargon may appear a bit hi-fi in the beginning, but as you dive deep, you will find that they are all simple things, right? All right. So when one software engineer, talks to the other, speaks with the other, they don't use that simple term folder. They use the term workspace. Well, that is there in every field. Have you not observed two doctors describing about the disease with which the patient is suffering? While there is the patient in the middle, doctor doesn't call cold as cold, right? Doctor may call it as acute bronchitis. That is their terminology. If that terminology is not used, eventually the doctor will not get the due respect from the patient, right? Same is the case here. So those who are new to terminology need not, develop any kind of fear. As you work with this technology, slowly you will get used to those terms, right? So as you start Eclipse, it shows you a welcome page like this. And by clicking on this restore button, well, you can invoke so many windows. The welcome window would not be required for us now. Task list, outline, these windows will be required at a later stage. So I'm just closing them down. In the IDE, it is enough if you leave 3 windows open. One window called Project Explorer, the other window where an editor will open up. Editor allows you to write code. And the third window, in which you can see the output. This window can act like console. Now, at any time, if Project Explorer is closed down, there is no need to panic. There is a menu called Window here. Under it, all right, Show View. Under it, there is this option Project Explorer. And that specific Eclipse, which I downloaded here, is Eclipse Neon. Now, as far as Eclipse is concerned, there are many flavors of it. Neon, Indigo, Juno, Kepler. All are same. All are almost same with small differences here and there with respect to look and feel. They are all same. I found Neon 3 to be more stable. Okay. Here in open source community, as and when a new thing is introduced, you must not, jump to it and start using it for your production immediately, because newly introduced tools may be having bugs in them. Okay, so you must always look for more stable things, stable ones, and download them. Okay, now to create a new project, go to File menu, click on the New button, and select Project. Select Java project. Same is the procedure that you will be following every day. You have to specify some name for your project. Any name can be mentioned, to that matter of fact, but name must not have any space in it. All right. Name is an identifier. Every identifier must be specified as one word, single word. Later on, when the regular sessions begin, I will discuss the industry specific naming conventions, industry standards, as far as naming conventions are concerned. Okay. For now, any name, may I call this as PROJ1, means project 1, right? And accept all other default settings. Remember, you must start using Eclipse only after having installed JDK, Java Development Kit. Okay. Eclipse runs on top of it. JDK and Eclipse must be downloaded separately. Now, since I had already installed JDK, my Eclipse has readily recognized my JDK installation. So all I need to do now is, after entering the project name, simply click on the finish button. There is no need even to go to the next step, because in the next step, it simply shows a preview of what is about to come. And anyway, after finishing to create the project, you will be able to see your project here in the project explorer, right? So no need to go to that preview step. And in this process, if Eclipse asks you to open associated perspective, simply click no. Thereby you can avoid some extra windows getting opened up. If you press S, the button S, then again, those additional windows like task list, outline window may open up. You will have to close them down again, right? So simply say no. All right. You can now see that your project appears as a node in the Project Explorer. Project Explorer becomes a very, very important window for us. At any time, it will show you the list of all the projects which you have developed so far in this workspace. And not only that, it shows the internal structure of every project. And as I said, initially, we would be developing all console application projects for studying all these concepts and learning them. Console application projects do not contain any graphical user interface. They are simply character user interface programs. Later on, gradually, we will learn how to develop user interface, means graphical user interface. Okay, so console application programs usually have one folder called SRC. SRC means source code. It is here where you have to save all your Java files. JRE system library is a node which contains all the internal APIs which the JVM uses. So we are not supposed to modify it or make any changes to it. If we play with it, well, the project may become unusable. So leave it like that, but to the system. Now your job entirely lies here, right, in SRC. Now I want to write some code, basic code in Java. Well, in Java, code, where to write code? You're all eager to start writing code, right? Because you're aiming to become developer. Your main job is to write code. In Java, code must always be present in a block called method. Okay? So a method is a block of code. And a method must always appear inside another block called class. So class is like a block inside which you can write methods. And each method is a block inside which you can write code. One class can contain many methods. And similarly, when you have several classes, all developed for same purpose or same project, then additionally and optionally, you can create one another extra layer called package. Okay. Well, having one package like this is purely optional, but as we move into advanced Java, we would be creating packages in every project, right? In core Java, perhaps the need for creating a package may not arise in the beginning, but without there being a class, there is no program in Java. Package may or may not exist, but class must exist. Now, when you don't create any package, Eclipse has a tendency to create one default package. The default package would be enough for us initially, right? But class, as far as class is concerned, it is your duty to create a class, then write methods in it, and then write code inside those methods. Initially, until we come to that concept called packages, we will not be bothered about this concept, right? Simply, we'll be working with class, methods, and code. Now, as far as my project is concerned, there isn't even a single class in it. So, I'll start adding the class to it. Perhaps you understand why I'm adding a class, right? Without a class, and further, I just described a class as a block inside which you can write methods, right? But That is not the complete definition. That is simply a layman's definition. Later on, you will understand that there is a big meaning behind the term class. In object-oriented programming, we'll discuss about each and every aspect that is behind the class, right? Don't worry. For now, simply keep in mind that a class will be needed in order to write a method, and a method will be needed in order to write a code. Now, to add a new class to your project, simply right-click on the project, new, and then choose the option class. Yes. Here in this dialog box, you will be asked to specify a name for the class. And don't be bothered about specifying name for the package, right? As I said, we shall study about packages a little while later. Now, name the class. May I start it in my class? But in real time, the name that you give to every business class must be relevant with the purpose. Okay, must be realistic in nature. Classes like my class, your class, welcome won't work there. Because this is a simply hello world program, specifying a name like my class. So along with Java, we will also be discussing good practices, right? Now, this class must have at least one method in it. Only then I can write code. A class can possess any number of methods in it, but there must be one method called main present in the class. Then only the code written in the class can be made to be run or can be executed. Main is the main method from where execution begins. So I would select this option so that Eclipse will not only add a class to my project, but will also generate an empty stub of a method called main inside it. Right? Well, I hope you are comfortable with the font size that has been set here. In case you have any difficulty in font, never hesitate to ask me to increase it, right? Okay, and now coming to this main, see the meaning of each and every keyword like public, class, static. Yeah, sure. So as we are coming to the end of the session, I simply write one hello world statement, right? System.out.println. See, generally, it's a usual practice to begin with one hello world program that prints a welcome message on the console, right? So we will go by the traditional approach. Right. So system.out.println. Welcome to Java. System.out.println is the output statement, which now makes this string appear on the console. So after having saved your work, simply you can run the program by right clicking anywhere within main, run as Java. And here you are, right? Well, everything will be thoroughly explained. Don't worry. In the meantime, we're almost done. We have come to the end of the session. Well, as a matter of fact, not possible for two human beings to come to an understanding by merely interacting for 1 hour or 2 hours, right? So I request you to at least attend 3 to 4 classes, then only arrive at any conclusion, okay, whether to continue or not, right? So actually I don't enjoy delivering demo sessions. Regularly, my students right from day one, it's like a regular session, right? Anyway, no problem. So demo means I should not be putting extra effort to convince or to be smart, to act smart, nothing like that. Okay, I don't like all those tactics. This is my usual style of teaching. Treat me like your friend, all right? Anytime you can interrupt me, get the doubts clarified, and then only allow me to move forward. Or if you have any doubts, left out in previous session, right at the beginning of the next session, you can ask me. You can raise those doubts and you can ask me to clarify them. All right. Thank you very much for having given this opportunity to come to this platform and interact with you. I look forward for regular classes. Thank you, guys.